Cybersecurity is supposed to be a great industry to get into, especially governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC, because you don't need a technical background. But when you apply for jobs, every single one of them requires experience. So, how are you supposed to get a job? I know exactly what that feels like. I completed postgraduate qualifications in cybersecurity and IT, and jobs that I applied for, entry level jobs, required experience that I didn't have. What helped me land my first job was some fictional assignments I did as part of my university courses. I mentioned these in an interview one time, sent a copy to the employer, and that sealed the deal. I got the job. This is because employers are not just looking for certifications. They want to see how you think, the quality of work you produce, doing the same tasks you'd be given, doing the actual job. Even if a client wants you to use an AI powered tool or platform, human knowledge and oversight is still critical to ensure an accurate and useful output. If employers are looking for evidence of your work, why wait for them to ask you for it? I've spent the last 5 years working in cyber GRC as a consultant, and in this video series, I will show you how to produce the actual deliverables of a real cyber GRC consultant and build a portfolio of your own work along the way. We will see how to use AI to generate your own fictional client scenario and how to take your fictional client scenario through the entire cyber GRC lifecycle, creating a major deliverable for each stage. By the end of this series, you will have created the same deliverables as real cyber GRC consultants and have a portfolio of your work to share with potential employers. This, for example, is the first document we will create, a security risk assessment, in which we analyze how our client organization functions, identify risks, and then recommend security controls to reduce high risks to an acceptable level. To get started, we need a client and a document template to use. You can create your own fictional client using the AI prompt in the video description. The AI created client I will use through this video series is called Cargo Trail Logistics. Cargo Trail Logistics was my first attempt at creating a fictional client with AI, and after some prompt experimentation and iteration, I ended up with the prompt in the video description. This prompt should produce an AI output that is a suitable balance of complexity and simplicity for someone starting to learn cyber GRC. Let me know in the comments how this prompt goes for you. This is the document template we will be using. You can download this using a link in the video description. This template is one I've created myself for this video series. It is based on the NIST cybersecurity framework and ISO 27001, as well as my 5 years of experience. While this document template will be different to what you will encounter in a job, the employer should have their own template that they want you to use, or maybe the client has a certain template that they insist you use. What we are learning in this series is the concepts behind these documents rather than a specific format or layout, so that when you do get a job, you feel comfortable using whatever document template you need to use. As we go through this video series, I will use this Cargo Trail Logistics SRA that I've already completed to show you how to progressively fill in the SRA document template piece by piece. And as part of the final video in this series, I will provide a download link so you can get a copy of this full Cargo Trail Logistics SRA for yourself. Our first document, a security risk assessment, also called an SRA, is conducted as part of the first stage of the GRC lifecycle, assess risk. If we look at how an SRA flows on to other stages of the GRC lifecycle, the primary functions of a risk assessment are to identify risks and to recommend controls for each risk to reduce high risks down to an acceptable level. But we have no idea if the controls we recommended are in place or working correctly. The next step is then stage 2, assure controls, where we use a controls validation audit to have a detailed look at the status of controls we recommended in the risk assessment. These controls can typically have 3 potential ratings. They can be effective, which is to say in place and doing what we want them to do. They can be partially effective, so in place but with issues or not fully functional, or not effective, which means either completely missing or they're there but there are major problems. Once we know the risks and the status of the controls, we can move to stage 3, govern risk, where we use a risk register to track and manage risks from the risk assessment and any other risks that we know about. If you think of an SRA as being like a photo at a certain moment in time, a risk register is a live camera feed that always shows the current status because this document is continuously updated. For stage 4, treat risk, we take the control audit results and track the fixing of control weaknesses and deficiencies in a remediation plan. Similar to the risk register, we may find additional deficiencies from other assessments that need to be fixed, and we can track everything in this constantly updated document. Stage 5, monitor and evolve, is where we turn the GRC lifecycle into a continuous process using a security governance plan to ensure that we repeat the previous stages and improve over time. On to our security risk assessment. To conduct an SRA, especially one that reflects real-world conditions, we can break this process down into 11 phases. We start by meeting our client and setting clear expectations in the kickoff meeting. We then use interviews and document reviews to gather information about our client to understand them. We use this information to begin identifying risks. In real life, it is highly unlikely that we have everything that we need from initial information gathering efforts. So we will also need to identify information gaps and request what we need from the client. Once we have everything we need, then we can fill in all the details for each risk. With the risks fully detailed, we can now identify what controls should be implemented, keeping in mind that these controls are normally just recommendations and clients often have budget and other constraints to consider. With the risks determined and the controls chosen, we can now work out the risk ratings. Each risk has a gross or inherent risk rating, assuming no controls are in place, and a target risk rating, assuming all recommended controls are in place and effective. We then summarize the risk findings and control recommendations in the executive summary section. This lets someone read this section and get a good idea of what the rest of the document is about without reading the whole thing. We then need to review our report to ensure it is complete and correct. We then discuss our report with the client to ensure everyone is aligned. Clients may not agree on the basis or ratings for all the risks we found, so we will need sound reasoning to justify our report. And lastly, we include any changes to reflect the client feedback and send the report off. For this first video, we start with the kickoff meeting phase. If we consider what we're looking to achieve in a kickoff meeting, we want to avoid showing up to a meeting or interview in the next phase, information gathering, asking questions like what technology does the client use, and the wrong person is in front of you and cannot answer your question. Equally, we do not want to think we are focusing the assessment on one thing, which is initially fine for us, but then extra things are thrown in and it can get messy. We want to avoid these situations. So, what do we need to achieve at a kickoff meeting? Well, quite a lot, actually, including introducing you and your team to the client, clarifying the assessment scope and objectives, understanding priorities, timelines, deliverables, setting up communication channels. We begin to gather information from the client, and we set up the next steps for this process, like what sort of people from the client we will need to collect the information that we need. And the client then decides, okay, given that we need certain information, who from their side is best positioned to give us this information. We want everyone involved to understand how the risk assessment process works to help set up the whole project for success. Because maybe a client has never done an SRA before and they don't understand the process, what we need from them, what we will be doing exactly, how long it will take. Maybe their client is making them do a risk assessment and they don't really want to do it. So it's important to understand, to make sure everyone's on the same page, and we know where we're going together. We cannot really simulate a kickoff meeting for our fictional AI-generated client company. So let's assume that we extract certain information from the scenario and put it into the risk assessment. Remember to first use the prompt and the link in the video description to create a fictional client scenario with AI and download the SRA template. Let's start out by putting our name and our company name into the SRA document. Okay, so we start out on the second page, the document control section, where we can put in our name and our company name. We can also put in version information. We can also add in our name or our company name at the beginning of the executive summary. So going to add in my company logo in the document header and also on the cover page. You don't have to have a company logo if you don't want to. I used AI to make this as well. So it is pretty easy if you just want to make your report look a little more believable. Now analyze your scenario and extract information like the client company names, stakeholder names, their industry, locations they operate in, what kind of business operations and processes they have, their customers, and why you are conducting this SRA. Extract this information and we'll begin to put it into the assessment. The AI probably gave you a lot more than just this, and that's fine. We will just start off with this for now. So on our cover page, we want to put in the client company name. We want to put the client's name into the document header. We can put in the document name, client stakeholders, on here as well. So the executive summary, including why the client is doing the risk assessment. I'll just mention as well that all through this template, I have sections like this where I have written everything out just to show what it would look like, to give an example of what you might say, the sort of things you might say, how you'd present it. Yeah, this is obviously to be deleted, but it's just to show you an idea of what could be there. And it's all throughout the document. There are little sections like this because it might not be clear what that's actually supposed to look like. As I mentioned before, it's not to say this template has to be a certain way. It's more about learning the concepts behind it. But this is just to demonstrate what it could look like instead of having all these, missing pieces here that are all highlighted. Finally, we have the assessment scope section where we can now write a bit of a narrative about the client, obviously their name, what type of company they are, where they operate, in more detail about what sort of thing they do. Again, this is not a special format or particular layout that you need to do, but just it's good to write something about what the client does, who they are. You can list things out with bullet points if you want, things like the key business processes that we're looking at the moment. We'll look at more technology stuff later in the next information gathering phase. But for now, yeah, have some practice taking the AI's output and trying to write something with it because it's important to be able to take information from somewhere and then write it in your own words. So I've just got something here. You can model it on this if you want, but the idea is just to start writing something and extracting that basic information from the AI output. So we've now met our client and everyone is clear on what this risk assessment is all about. In the next video, we're going to look at the information gathering phase. Tell me in the comments, if you're meeting cargo trail logistics for the first time, what's one question you would ask in the kickoff meeting?